Welcome, everybody, to Podcast Answers, the show where I help you start and grow your podcast, answering any podcasting questions along the way. And today's topic is something that I wonder about a lot, just because I don't know where there's so many different places where people can keep their podcast data for their episode. And what I mean by that is show notes, topics, what are you going to talk about? I've got good ideas all the time. I come through, I've got ideas, and lots of times I'm thinking of those while I'm out running around. I'm at the store, and I'm thinking, that'd be like a great episode for Podcast Answers. Or I'm listening to another podcast, and I think that'd be a great episode for Podcast Answers. But by the time I go to plan my next episode, I completely forget what I'm actually talking about. And so I don't want to do that. I don't want to forget what I'm talking about, what I want to talk about for Podcast Answers. So there are several different things that you can use to save your data. And the first one, I'm gonna go out. It's real easy. Everybody's heard of it before. You can use Google Apps, Google Docs. And for that one, it's just real super simple. You open up a doc, you create maybe a spreadsheet, because Google Docs, if you've not heard of it, is basically an online Microsoft Office. You have a word processing, you have a Excel type spreadsheet type thing. And so that's great. You can create episode ideas for that. I do that for one of my shows. The Dudes and Dads podcast is one of the shows that I produce, and I do that for that show. I take it and I anytime I have an idea, I open up Google Docs, have it on my phone, on my iPad, on my computer, and I write down, okay, this is my idea, how to whatever. The nice thing that I like about Google Docs and Google Apps and Google whatever is that you can share things. So let's say you do have a co-host, and this is great, especially if you're not face-to-face with your co-host. But even if you are in the same room as your co-host, if you create your show doc, and you should have a show doc. If you don't have a show doc, that's something that you should be doing. But if you don't have a show doc, essentially what it is a rundown of what you're going to be talking about. So you have notes on it. You have this is the way, I want to talk about this, then I want to talk about this. We have this sponsor, things like that. So the nice thing about doing it with Google Docs, if you have a co-host, whether they're in the same room or not, the nice thing is you can see where everybody's editing on that. And so it's kind of a live editing document. And that's great, because I can say real quickly in, my color or whatever, let's say I'm red or whatever, I can say, type in the document, I will get this section. And then my co-host knows that I'm going to talk or I'm going to take this section. So that way there's not any like, well, are you going to take this section, or am I going to take this session right as you're doing the show? It sounds more professional if you can know what's going to happen beforehand. And so that's one of those things that I like doing is if we're having a co-host, having that together, and so that they can see what's going on, you can see what's going on, and it's not going to be an issue. So the next thing that I like using is an app called Notion. And I've used this app for just a little bit now, not too long, but it's kind of cool. So let me show you Notion a little bit. So Notion is kind of more on a database. And if you're listening just on the podcast app, this is one that you might want to use and have with watch the YouTube video, because it does show, you can see what I'm showing. So essentially Notion is like a database. So I've got two different databases here. One called News, which has nothing in it, but if I think about news that I want to, there's podcasting news that I want to display and talk about in the show, I put that in there. If there's topics, I put them in the topics database. And the nice thing about that is you can create any attributes that you want and have them show up. And so for me, I have the name, different tags, or a YouTube show, a YouTube podcast. I have a check mark if it's recorded. I have the episode date, and I have the post URL all showing. Now there's more fields in there. This is just the fields that are showing on my main screen. And so let me go ahead and go back to I'll start with my how to record your podcast episode. So I open that. Let's open that all the way. And then right there I have all of that same data. So I have notes, I have the media URL, I have transcript URL, I have where the post URL is, I have when it's recorded, I have if it's the YouTube URL. So I can put all of my information in here for each episode. So that way, if I need to look at that really quick, let's say I'm talking to somebody and I know that I've done an episode on how to record your podcast, but I can't remember the URL or the date that I recorded it. I can quickly do a search and I can find it. And in this case, I see it's podcastanswers.com/record is this how to record your podcast episode. So then I write my show notes in here under one of the fields. But the nice thing is then you have kind of a open free form place to type too. So I've got, like all of my different bullet points, like a USB mic or software and the different mics that are good to start with, how to speak into your microphone clearly using a pop filter or windscreen. If you have a co-host, make sure your levels are close to one another. Like these are all things that I talked about in that show episode. But the nice thing about it is because I have this all right here, and I like this one because I'm doing it just myself. I don't need to have that live edit feature. And so this is where I keep my content at. And then I can go back at any time I need to, and I can add more fields if I need to. I don't want to remove that. You can go ahead and have any of your ideas. So for me, I know that if I'm going to do a full podcast episode about it, then I'm going to put it in here as a full episode. I'm going to not have the recorded button check, but then I'm going to, or I can do YouTube videos or bonuses or things like that. And then you can do and save different views. So like in my case, I have that was everything. I'm seeing everything, all of my ideas, even ones that are published. And then I have a published view, which shows actually that is not not right. This seems to be backwards, but it will just show all of your full podcast episodes. You can change it like that. I must have messed this one up, but you can sort it so that you see just the published episodes or just ideas or things like that. So that way you can get your ideas going. You can have it so that way you know where your data is at. Again, it's super handy when you're out in the field because Notion has an app, and by the field, I just mean anywhere that's not in your podcast studio. Notion has an app that you can go ahead and put those things right in there so you don't forget those ideas, because you don't want to forget ideas when you're out and about and a good idea comes up. You want to make sure to capture that idea so that way you can put a good podcast episode out later without having to sit down and go, what was I going to think about again? What was I going to edit? What was I going to put on the show? So this will help you. Now, another way you can do it is you can just do it with the Notes app on your phone too. I mean, really, you can do it anywhere, but the nice thing about that is you have it. Every phone has a Notes app. If you're on an iPhone, you can send links to that out. You can kind of co-edit on those things too, so that works really well. If you have a Mac like I do, then that same Notes app is on the Mac, so it just kind of syncs back and forth to where you're at. So that's nice. I'm a big fan of Notion just because of the fact that it's more of a database. And if you're more of that type of person where you want to capture lots of ideas and have different details about those ideas, like your show notes, your show URL, because for me, I use that when I'm editing. So for me, I really do. So I post all of, I post the YouTube video, I upload the audio to Captivate, and then I get the link to that file so I can create my own RSS feed. I get the link to the transcript, the link to the cover art, and then I can use those, and I have those handy whenever I need them, whether it's for creating my RSS feed or whether it's creating anything else or just sharing the data out. I have that handy whenever I need to do that. So guys, how do you do this? I want to hear from you. If how do you keep your data? Different ways to do it. So if you want to, you can go ahead and contact me at podcastanswers.com/contact. I would love to hear from you. It's great when I hear from my listeners. And guys, also make sure that you hit us up on social media. We're Podcast Answers in every place but Twitter. In Twitter, we're Podcast Answers 1. But make sure that you hit that and subscribe to all of those locations. Subscribe to our YouTube video. We would love to see you. And guys, if you like what we do here and want to support the show, you can always go to buymeacoffee.com/podcastanswers, and that will allow us to continue doing what we do. It takes money to run this show. It takes money to get new equipment. It takes money. And so if you appreciate what we do and want to give back, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/podcastanswers, and that will allow you to get extra bonus content, support us in whatever way that you feel you get value out of this episode. So guys, thanks again for listening and subscribing. I'll be back next week. If you have not, I actually just put out a podcast, or not a podcast episode, but a YouTube video on using Stream Deck and using the Stream Deck app that came out. You can get free 6-button Stream Deck just by having an iOS app. So, and using the app on your phone. So if you've not checked that out, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@podcastanswers, and you'll see that video right there. Guys, have a great week.